So remember yesterday we did factor by grouping, we did factoring out greatest common factor. Those are things that are still going to continue to play in even as we add in more methods. They kind of get combined and looped together. So making sure that you keep in mind that you have to be able to check every single time for a greatest common factor. What? So, the first type we're looking at with our trinomials, ladies, I don't have to tell you again. Got it? Thank you. First type of trinomial we're going to look at in standard form with a leading coefficient of 1. Those are going to be the easiest ones that we look at. Okay? That leading coefficient of 1. If it's anything other than 1, then it's an additional process. Okay? We're looking at primarily the value of C and B, the constant and the coefficient. We want to find a pair of numbers that multiplies to give me C, but adds to give me B. All right? If you have your graphing calculator, in a little bit I'll show you an easy way to find all your factor pairs, especially as we get larger numbers. So have that out and ready for when we do that. Okay? But we're looking for numbers that multiply to give me C and add to give me B. All of these polynomials will factor into a general pattern of your variable plus and minus something, your variable plus and minus something. Okay? So you're just finding what that something is to get your factors. Okay? Nice and simple to start. I need two numbers that multiply to give me 20, but they add to give me 9. 4 and 5. Okay? 4 times 5 gives me 20. 4 plus 5 gives me 9. That's what I'm looking for. Again, our pattern is variable. In this case, our variable is A. And it's going to be plus or minus, depending on the sign of the number. Since they're both positive, it's both plus. Easy peasy, right? Numbers that multiply to C but add to B. That's just a visual thing for multiply, add, 4 and 5. But it's the same process. We're looking for what multiplies to give me that, adds to give me that. Okay? Multiplies to give me 10, but adds to give me negative 7. Negative 5. Okay? Negative 2, negative 5 give me a positive 10. Negative 2 plus negative 5 gives me negative 7. Okay, so being aware of the signs, your factors, you have positive and you have negative. You have both. Okay? So, my variable is B. And because they're negative, it's going to be subtraction. All right. Two numbers that multiply to give me negative 5, but add to give me 3.
2 and 3. We know it's 10.
Nothing. So what do we call something that can't be factored? Right. Okay? Now I've got extra variables. It's still quadratic in form, but instead we're going to be looking for something that multiplies to give me 6q squared and adds to give me negative 5q. That p is just going to kind of come along. It's still going to factor in the same format as we have before. Plus or minus something, plus or minus something. We just need to make sure that something's multiply to give me a positive 6q squared and an add to give me negative 5pq. So if I look at my factor pairs of 6, I've got 1 and 6. I've got 2 and 3. But now my factor pairs are just going to include q's as well. That way when I multiply them, I get the q squared. When I add them, I get the negative 5. So positive, negative, positive, negative, positive, negative, positive, negative. What combination gives me negative 5? but I need to get a positive 6, which means both numbers have to be negative. Negative 2 and negative 3. Negative 2q, negative 3q. And if you're ever not sure, you want to check your work, multiply it. Multiply it back together to check. P times P gives me the P squared. P times 3Q, negative 3PQ. Negative 2Q times P, negative 2PQ. And then I get my positive 6Q squared. That was just multiplication.
What's the answer?
That's the answer. That's a double check.
What is that, a 1Q? Plus.
Looking for factors that multiply to give 6 but add to give negative 5. Negative 2 and negative 3. Or what does that? Nate, get your foot down. What are you doing? Alright. Gotta factor out 3a first. Always check for a greatest common factor. It must be factored out first. If not, then you're likely to either get the wrong factors or not factor it completely. Always check for your GCF. In this case, it's 3a. When I factor out 3a, what am I left with?
A squared plus 4a.
Good. Now, factor that.
4 and no. Negative 4 and negative 1. No. I can't. 5 and
5 and 1. Negative 1. And then our GCF follows along with it. It's still part of our answer. So when we had that GCF, that's still going to be one of our factors. Then we factor the trinomial to get the other two. Okay? This is the thing that disappears the most. Please make sure it follows along. Okay? Question on that? Okay? Do you have a GCF? No. So, now it's going to be a little different. There's 3 or 4 different methods for factoring when our leading coefficient is not a 1. Okay? Some Algebra 2 teachers, rainbow method, slide divide, factor by grouping. I'm going to stick with factor by grouping because that's what we did yesterday. We did factor by grouping. I just want to keep it consistent in that. If you want to learn another way, come by during tutoring hours. I'll show you another way just to make it, give you some variety. But just to add for some of that consistency, I'm going to stick with factor by grouping. Okay? We're still looking for 2 numbers that add to negative 19. That's still there. But instead of finding what multiplies to give me 10, I want to find what multiplies to give me 60. Okay? So I need factor pairs of 60 that give, so product of 60, factor pairs of 60 that give me a sum of negative 19. Okay? Now this is where your calculator is going to come in handy because we're going to get it to list all of our factor pairs of 60. Okay? So, open up your calculator. Alright? And go to the graphing function. Press y equals on the graphing function. Y equals. Y equals. Alright? You ready? So, the number you want factors of. In this case, we want factors of 60. Type 60. Okay? Then, divided by x. So, whatever you want factors of, divided by x. I'm literally pointing at it. It's right here. Right there. Okay? Once you've got that, you want to go to the table. So you're going to press second and then graph. And that'll open up the table. And look at all these wonderful factor pairs. Focus on the integers. Okay? Don't worry about the decimals. Focus on the integers. Now, I want positive 60, but I want a sum of negative 19. What does that tell me about my factors? They're both going to be what? And negative. So, scroll up to our negatives. Which one's going to give me a sum of negative 19? Negative 4 and negative 15. So I can see that pair, and now I know that's what I'm going to use. Okay? Now, so I know that my numbers are going to be negative 4 and negative 19. Or not negative 19, negative 15. Thank you. All right? So here's what I'm going to do. Is I'm going to take negative 19 and I'm going to split it into negative 4 and negative 15. And rewrite my quadratic. Negative 4, k. Okay, negative 4k. There we go. Minus 15k plus 10. Now we're going to do factor by grouping. So I'm going to look at the two pairs of terms and factor out my greatest common factor. What's my GCF for the first two terms? 2k. When I factor that out, that leaves me with what? 3k minus 2. For the second factored pair, I want to factor out something that will leave me with 3k minus 2. Keep going.
It's 2k minus 5.
Then we're done.
Can't you also put it so, can't you do it where it's like 6k minus 4, 6k minus 15 and do it that way?
6k minus 4 and 6k minus 15, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and then,
Yeah, I mean, you're essentially doing the same thing.
right.
Yeah. And like I said, there's like 3 or 4 different ways to do it. As long as you get here, okay. Just get there. Alright? Go ahead and try A. Try A on your own.
And so do I put in the calculator?
You have to. If you don't have to, you don't have to.
Please don't put in the calculator.
You can find the factor pairs without it. 30's only got a few factor pairs. 130, 215, 310, 5 and 6.
I wanted to do it as well, but I don't know how to do it, so I forgot the calculator.
Alright. What are my two numbers? Keep going, ignore me. Okay. Now, the order that you put those usually doesn't matter that much. Okay. If you find you can't do factor by grouping, then you can switch the order of the middle two numbers. But if you can do the grouping, then you'll probably be okay, regardless of the order. And it'll change how the middle step looks, depending on whether you do 15x plus 2x or 2x plus 15x. Okay? So even if your middle step looks different, the final step should still look the same. GCF for my first two terms. Okay? Now I already have 2x plus 3 over here, so what do I factor it out so that it doesn't change? 1. Okay? 5x plus 1, 2x plus 3. Alright? So I need 2x plus 3. I already have 2x plus 3. So I still have to factor something out. But I don't want it to change. Don't take a picture, write it down. Or I'll take your iPad. I still have to factor something out. But I don't want this to change. So I'm going to factor out a 1.
Okay, so if you What if you were?
You'll factor out something different, you'll still get the same result.
Okay.
So if you did the 2, you'll factor out a 2x instead of a 5x, and then you'll factor something, and then you'll factor the 3, so you'll get the 2 and 3. You wouldn't have to do the 1.
Okay, got it.
The only reason we have to do the 1 is because I need my second grouping to be 2x plus 3. It's already 2x plus 3. So I don't want it to change.
Okay.
So I factor out the 1 so that I have something, but that doesn't change. Cool? Okay. All right. What do I need to get product of for B? Negative what? 30. And a sum of 13. All right. So what two numbers give me?
Negative 15.
Which one?
Negative 15 and positive 2. No, positive 15 and negative 2.
Okay. So again, just depending on the order that you put them, may adjust your factoring. Okay.
Wait, isn't 2 supposed to be negative? Isn't it supposed to be negative?
It is. You're right. Thank you. Okay. All right. Be like that. There we go. Okay. So my first two pairs. Okay. Factor out a negative 1 so that we get those signs switched. Good. 3r minus 1. 2r plus 5. Okay. We're only going to do the first one here, not the second one. Just like when we had the P and the Q, it's the same setup, okay? But I still have to get a product of negative 30, but I want it to get negative 30n squared, okay? So I'm still going to end up with something m plus or minus something n. Oopsie, a little more space. Something m and n. Okay, so I'm still just need to fill in some stuff here. Still going to give me that same format. And I'm looking again, product of negative 30 with a sum of 7. Product of negative 30 with a sum of 7. 10. Okay, so let's do it 6m squared minus 3mn plus 10mn minus 5n squared. Alright, so 7mn became negative 3 and 10. And then just do your groupings. Alright, GCF of 3m leaves me with 2m minus n. GCF of 2n leaves me with 5n. Leaves me with 2mn. So I end with 2m minus n, 3m plus 5. Not in the second one. That one. Because I factored out a 3. And that coefficient is 3. So now the coefficient is negative 1. I'm going to skip that one because I want to make sure I have enough time for everything else. What do I need to do here? Factor out 2m first. Take out that GCF. So 2m. Good. Now I need to factor my quadratic. A product of negative 6. That adds to 1. That? Don't forget our GCF. It's still coming along for the ride. Okay? Don't lose it. It's still part of your answer. First grouping. Factor out a... Actually, I'm going to switch that. Make that minus 2. This looks better that way. Factor 2m. Giving me m minus 1. Second grouping. Factor out your 3. M minus 1. And then finish your factors. 2m plus 3. M minus 1. Yep. That 2m is just going to follow along for the ride. You can keep it, but I don't really do anything else. We good there? All right. Now, do not bother expanding this. Okay? When you see you have these parentheses, but your grouping is identical. Okay? This is what we call an equation that's quadratic in form. Okay? Doesn't look exactly like a quadratic trinomial, but it is quadratic in form. What we're going to do is we're going to factor by substitution. We're going to pretend and let z plus 5 equal x. And what that's going to do is going to take that equation and make it a whole lot easier to deal with, a lot easier to factor. We're going to replace that binomial with x, giving me 8x squared minus 2x minus 3. That's a whole lot easier to factor. Once it's factored, I'll put that binomial back in and then simplify, but let's make it easier to factor first. So now we can go ahead and factor. Product of 24, that adds to negative 2. What multiplies to give me negative 24, but adds to give me negative 2? Okay, which one's going to be positive, which one's negative? Okay, so let's do positive 4x minus 6x3. Do our grouping. 4x, 2x plus 1, negative 3 plus 1, minus 3, 2x plus 1. Now that it's factored, we're going to plug it back in here into this. The thing we substituted, plug it back in for x so that we end up back with our original variable, original equation. And then we'll just expand and simplify, okay? Since we've got multiplication, we'll have to distribute, and then we'll have to combine like terms afterwards, all right? So, going up here, I'm replacing x with z plus 5. So I have 4 times z plus 5 minus 3. That's one of my factors. And then 2 times z plus 5 plus 1. That's my other factor. I substituted it back in for x. Distribute, because now we got to simplify. 4 times z plus 5 gives me what? And then? Good. And then combine like terms. And 2. We're done. I'm going to set up the next one, and I want you to finish it. All right? Yeah. Yep, it's a Z. Again, quadratic in form, trinomial, but I have fourth and second power. Okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to replace r squared with x. Okay? Remember with your exponents, r to the 4th power is the same as r squared to the 2nd power. So if I have 6r squared squared minus 13r squared plus 5, I'm going to replace r squared with x. And that's going to give me 6x squared minus 13x plus 5. Much easier to factor. I want you to finish it. Factor this. Once it's factored, plug r squared back in. The positive 30. Both numbers have to be negative. Positive 2 give you negative 13, but they don't give you positive 30. They give you negative 30. So you got to pay really close attention to the signs. Okay? Questions, comments, concerns? All right.